Let's get started with part 2 of cracking cyber. I presented part 1, and there are people who went to watch that particular presentation, and I really liked the way that it's been going on. So I thought like creating a part. The reason that I'm doing it is because I'm also preparing for the cybersecurity certifications, and I recently just cleared one of the fundamental certification from ISC² called CC, Certified in Cybersecurity, or Cybersecurity Certified. So it just gave me more encouragement to make more videos of it. So let's get started. So the first one that we wanted to talk about is this particular one. It's about the governance. Which of the following is the primary purpose of establishing a risk management framework in an organization? And we have 4 choices here. So within that 4 choices, to comply with legal and regulatory requirements. That's one. The other thing is to ensure risk management activities are consistent and repeatable. And the third one is to improve the efficiency of IT operations. And the fourth one, which is D, is to reduce the cost of risk mitigation. And if you think about it for a second, the question is the primary purpose, right? So that's the highlighted one. I believe the right answer on this one would be the B, to ensure risk management activities are consistent and repeatable. And if you look at it, yeah, it's the right answer. Now, in order for you to get this right, you have to make sure that all other 3s are wrong, right? So let's talk about the first one here. To comply with legal and regulatory requirements, that's more of the compliance, right? Compliance is more important, but it's not the primary driver, right? So it's its primary purpose. Now, the next one is C, which is to improve the efficiency of IT operations. IT operations is, there is a benefit of having that IT operations, but at the same time, it's not a direct benefit, it's an indirect benefit. So when you're trying to establish the risk management framework, I do not believe the efficiency of IT operation is the primary purpose, right? Now, the last one is about the reduction of cost of risk mitigation. This may happen. There is a possibility that the cost to reduce the cost, but this is not the primary driver or primary goal to have the risk management framework, right, in an organization. It could be a part of it, but it's not the primary. So the focus is more like the primary. So that's why you got to be more careful in answering this question. And I believe the right answer is B on this one here. All right, let's move on to the next question. All right, when conducting a risk assessment, which of the following is the most critical first step? A is identification of KRIs, which is key risk indicators. Second is the definition of the risk assessment methodology. Third one is the documenting existing controls. And the last one is about estimation of the potential impact of those risks. And I believe on this one, the right answer is B, to define the risk assessment methodology, right? And let's talk about this a little bit, right? Now, before you identify the risk, the impact, the controls, you need to have a clear methodology, right? And why do you need to have this is because it gives you, or it ensures that your assessment are pretty much consistent to the line, right? And so that you can compare it, and you can make that more repeatable. repeatable across the organization, right? So what is KRI? KRI comes later on, because once you identify the risks, then the KRI will measure that, right? The second one, that it's B, which is define the risk assessment. Now the third one is about document existing controls. Like, so when you're documenting the existing control, this is the part of requirement gathering, I would say, right? The input that you have, but this is not the first step, right? So the key is the first step here, most critical first step. And if you look at D, the impact estimation of the potential impact of risk, and it also happens after risks are identified and the setup of when you set up the methodology, right? So that comes later. So this is not going to be a first step. So when conducting a risk assessment, defining the risk assessment methodology is the first step. So just want to get that out. Now let's talk about the third one, I would say, right? Now, if you look at this one here, a business decides to stop offering an online service because the risk of data breaches is too high and mitigation costs exceed potential benefits. Which risk response strategy does this represent? So I think you understand the question here. There are 4 choices: risk mitigation, risk transfer, risk avoidance, and risk acceptance, right? So which one do you think is the right answer here? Data breach is too high, right? When it's too high, you might want to think about the transfer, but the cost is exceeding the benefits, right? You do something so that you can have a benefit. And the investment, if you're not getting the value of that investment, then it's not worth putting your feet in it. Now, based on that, I believe the right answer is the avoidance, which is C in this case. So the reason that we picked C is because you have a risk. When you have a risk, there is no way you can manage the risk, either by transferring it, either by mitigating it. Well, mitigation is another one. When you mitigate, the risk still persists, right? But it's a lower risk from high to low, right? So that's what mitigation does. But in some cases, when we cannot manage risk at all, then it's better off just to avoid it. And that's the right choice, right? Now, mitigation, like as I mentioned, is about having a less risk, but not totally eliminate it. You can never eliminate the risk, right? Now, the second one is about transferring to the, like for instance, insurance companies, the third party. You can transfer that risk, or getting some MSPs and all this. That's another one, right? Now, the risk acceptance is when you exercise all the various avenues and you come to a conclusion saying that there is no way that anybody can, help us out, then you do not have any choice. If you want to continue in that business, you have to accept it, right? So that's what it is. Now, avoidance is like, well, you do not want to proceed there at all. And acceptance is like, well, we know that the risk exists. We're not transferring it. We're taking it. We accept it, right? So that's the distinction between this mitigation, transfer, avoid, and acceptance are. Now let's move on to the next one here. Which of the following best ensures that IT risk management is aligned with overall business objectives? Best ensures that IT risk management is aligned with overall business objectives. A is conducting quarterly IT risk assessment. You have to do that regardless. Implementing a COVID or ISO IEC 27001 framework. Integrating IT risk management into enterprise governance, and finally establishing IT specific risk indicators, KRIs. Which one do you think is the right answer here? And I'm having some doubt here, but I believe it is C. So let's pick up C and then go for it. C, yeah, C is the right answer, right? So let's have some understanding on this one here. Quarterly assessment, like I said, it's always useful. We do that every quarter, but having that alignment, it's not going to give us anything that we want to achieve. Now, B is about the, these are like COVID and ISO. These are like a control framework, right? The framework will not alone help us integrating into the enterprise governance part, so that the risk management supports and aligns with overall business objective, right? Overall business objective is the key. And we picked up C, I'm sorry, excuse me, integrating IT risk management into enterprise governance. That's going to help us out. It's about connecting the IT risk decisions with business strategy or the enterprise strategy and their priority. Now on the D, KRI is a metrics, right? So metrics alone will not give you any, it'll not help you in having that alignment, right? So you just want to make sure that you're picking up the right answer by eliminating all these different choices there. So I think the right answer is C in this one here. Now let's move on to the other one, and this is about the risk concept. Which of the following best describes residual risk? So residual risk is like there's a risk, you manage that risk, but manage the risk, you still have some risk. Some parts of risk still exist. So that's what the residual risk is, right? So there are four choices: risk that exists before any controls are applied, a risk that remains after controls are implemented. So I think it's going to be B no matter what. Based on what I just read, risk transfer to a third party, that's a risk transfer. Risk that has a low likelihood of occurrence. And you never know, right? So let's see, the right answer is B, is because number A, the choice A is risk that exists before any controls are applied. So it's called, before you applied any kind of control, the risk does exist. It's called inherent risk, right? Risk before controls. C, we talked about risk transfer to like third party. That's another one. When you transfer to third party, there won't be any kind of residual risk that's left, so it's out of question. And then if you look at the D, it's low likelihood of risk. That does not define the residual risk. So the key is residual risk is a risk that's been answered, will answer, but still answering that risk or addressing that risk, you still have some risk left there, and that's what the residual risk is. Right, let's move on to the next one. This is a rather long question here. A company is implementing a new cloud-based HR system. Okay, during the risk assessment, the team identifies that unauthorized access could lead to exposure of sensitive employee data. Which of the following is the most appropriate way to quantify this risk? Let's start going through it. Count the number of employees in the system. We're talking about the risk exposure here, lead to exposure. So I don't know if A is the right choice here. Evaluate the likelihood of unauthorized access and potential impact on the organization. Let's keep that aside. Go with C here. Check whether the cloud provider is ISO 27001 certified. So what if they are certified, right? I mean, like most of the cloud providers are, but whether or not that's going to address our question or no, right? It definitely helps in control, but when you're trying to quantify the risk, I don't think you'll have any luck in there. Estimate the cost of new system implementation. Okay, so system implementation is $500,000, right? How come that quantify the risk itself? So I think the right answer is B. First, you have to evaluate the likelihood of unauthorized access and potential impact on the organization. I hope you got this right. Sometimes the question is too long, and when you're reading it, you just get like, oh, what is this talking about, right? So you want to make sure that you understand the question thoroughly before you dig into answering the choices out there, picking up the choice and answering it. All right, let's move on to the next one of financial services firm identifies a risk of insider fraud in its transaction processing center. So we're talking about a PCI. The firm decides to implement segregation of duties and enhance monitoring to reduce the likelihood of fraud. Which risk response strategy is this? So we have 4 risk response strategies: avoidance, mitigation, transparency. Now, if you need to understand what segregation of duties is, right? If you go back to my first video, you'll see what segregation of duties is, because I was answering that when I was responding to these choices there. When I read this question, right, this segregation of duties, enhanced monitoring, what is this about? Right? These are all about, okay, let's see if avoidance is the right choice. When you go into the avoidance, you're not moving forward at all, so you're going to be entirely stopping it, and that's not what the question is asking about. So A obviously is not the right answer. B is the mitigation, right? Let's keep that aside for now. Transfer. You wanted to transfer your risk to a third party, like the insurance party. Will that help here or no? Right? Now, reducing the likelihood of fraud. And then D is the acceptance. Acceptance generally means that you are taking it in, right? You do not take any further action. You see the persistent risk in there, and you decided that we want to take it. So that's what the acceptance is all about. That's not what we're trying to do here. So I think the right answer on this one would be mitigation. This question is also rather long, so just read it like 2 or 3 times if you do not get it in the first shot, and try to separate it out. And that way you'll understand everything that's in there. The next one is this question here, and it also looks like it's rather long, but now let's understand. An organization's board is concerned about increasing cyber threats and wants to ensure risk management practices are consistent across all departments. Which of the following is the best approach for management? So when we're talking about departments, there are so many different departments, like finance is one, marketing is another one, HR is another one, right? So, if you look at it from that, accounting is another one. If a lot of people are confused in finance and accounting, they're separate. I mean, they're together, but actually it's not, right? So, excuse me. Now, let's take a look at the answers here, or the choices here. And on the choices, it says, assign each department to manage its own risk independently. When you do that, finance is managing its own risk, HR is managing its own risk, right? And it's not having that centralized risk management approach, right? So it's not going to be that consistent. So it's out of question. Second one is about implementation of centralized risk management framework and reporting structure. Now that looks more promising to me is because it's a centralized risk management. You create that framework and each and every department has to adhere to it. It's like a mandate. Okay, you stick to it. You do what it says you to do. You cannot just like go beyond it, above and beyond, and try to, bring your own theory or the way that you want to do it. So we have given you a framework to stick to it. So I think it's B is one of the right choice. So let's take a look at C here. C is about ad hoc assessment, conducting an ad hoc assessment, risk assessment, whether a threat is identified. So this is more like it comes later than now, right? We're talking about now. I mean, we have to establish this, the framework, right? So this particular approach is more like it's a reactive, and we're looking at the proactive approach, so it's out of question. Now, outsource all risk management activities to an external consultant, right? Okay, that's fine. We're transferring it, but it's that particular expertise does not help us to ensure enterprise-wide consistency there. So consistency is something that we're looking for here, so that each and every department will adhere to that particular framework, right? So I think the right answer is B here. All right, let's move on to the next one. Which of the following is most effective control to protect sensitive data in transit between corporate offices? Excuse me. Now, we're talking about the data in transit here, right? Whenever you see transit, it means that the data is still, it's not at rest, and it's happening, it's going on, right? So the problem is when the data is traversing like that, there is a possibility that somebody can come and man-in-the-middle attack can happen in there. The only way to prevent that is by having some sort of encryption, right? So whenever looking at the question, you always think like, well, encryption is one thing that I want to focus into. Let's take a look at the choices here. The A is about having a strong password policy, but the policy will give us, okay, having a strong password policy. Okay, there's a password that we implied, but the data in transit, how it's going to help, right? B is about encryption, so let's leave that alone for now because we talked about encryption before. The third one is about annual security awareness training. Okay, training is fine, but it does not secure the data, right? So you have to look at it from that perspective too. And the next one is network firewall with intrusion detection, right? IDS system will detect if there is any kind of intruder that's coming into your network, and it protects your network, right? But it won't encrypt the traffic. And we're talking about the traffic here, moving traffic, right? So I think the better option on this one is data encryption using TLS or SSL. Is the right choice. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Excuse me, I'm not sure. Excuse me. The next one is about the risk response and reporting. It talks about the healthcare organization experience. There is a healthcare organization that experiences frequent ransomware attacks, right? So this particular organization is being hammered by ransomware, right? And then management, what they have decided is to purchase the cyber insurance, right? So purchase cyber insurance. And whenever you see this insurance in there, right? Insurance is all about transfer. Just keep that in mind, to cover the potential financial losses, right? We've been losing it. And if somebody's saying that, well, I'm going to take control of it and you don't have to lose what you're losing it. So of course I'm giving it to that particular individual, and he's gonna, or he, she, or they will manage it. Losses, well, maintaining current security controls. Which risk response strategy is this? A is avoidance. We're not avoiding anything. When you avoid it, you stop everything. You're not going anywhere. And just, that's not what's happening here. Second one is about mitigation, right? It's reducing the likelihood of risk, the impact. That's not what's happening here, because deciding to cyber insurance, purchasing that policy, right? And then C is the transfer is more promising, and we talked about it before as well. And the acceptance is about, we're not doing anything but saying that, yeah, we'll accept it. That's not what we're doing, because we're trying to transfer. But so the right answer is C here, which is a transfer. It's easy. It's a pretty easy question. Even the question looks a little longer. It's really easy. Next one is about the risk assessment here. A retail company is planning to implement a new online payment system. The risk assessment identifies the possibility of payment card data breaches. Management wants to quantify the financial risk if such a breach occurs. Which of the following is the best approach here? A is about counting the number of credit card transactions per month. Okay, so what if you have 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50? How does that's going to quantify your financial risk? So quantifying financial, I just want to make sure that you understand the question. Quantifying financial risk, meaning you are kind of like calculating or estimating your potential losses. If, is a big if, the risk happens, right? And when we talk about the potential losses, we're talking about so many different things here. It could be there's a breach, there could be a fine, there could be, you're not compliant, you lost your reputation, there is a reputational damage in there, there is probably some lawsuit in there. The lawsuit will have some money associated with it, right? Dollar value, all those things that are out there, right? So A is not the right choice by that definition. B is estimating the potential financial losses, including fines, litigation, and reputational impact. That's what we just talked about it, right? So let's leave that in there. Implementing network firewalls and intrusion detection system. Ideas is a mitigation. It's not about losses, right? So whenever you're quantifying financial risk, like I mentioned, you are you're having some losses in there, right? Estimation of that. So I don't think that's the right answer also. And then D is about training, conducting annual security awareness training for employees, which will not help to quantify the financial risk, right? So the right answer to this one is, we talked about it, is the estimating the potential financial losses, including fines, litigation, and reputational impact, which is B. Now, the next one is about the organization identifies a high likelihood of data leakage due to employee negligence. The management decides to implement mandatory data handling training and DLP, which is DLP stands for data loss prevention software. This risk response is an example of what? Data leakage, employee negligence, implementation of mandatory data handling, training, and DLP. What is he trying to do here? Is he avoiding it? No, because it's still going on. Is he mitigating it? Maybe. Is he transferring it? Doesn't look like. There's no third party that's involved in there. Is he accepting it? Well, yeah, there's an acceptance, but it's more than acceptance. There are some measures that's been taken. So I believe the right answer would be the mitigation in here. Let's see, and which is the mitigation, right? There's already a risk, but having these controls in place will have less risk. And that's what the mitigation is all about. Now let's move on to the next one, which is the board of a multinational company is concerned that different subsidiaries follow inconsistent risk management practices. Which approach would best address this concern? So there is some level of inconsistency in risk management practices through different subsidiaries. Now, we just want to bring everybody into the same umbrella here, right? Let's see what are the choices that we have. Allow each subsidiary to manage risk independently. I think this particular question, we talked about it earlier also. One of the questions, I think we talked about the departments, right? Maybe it's the same one. So let's take a look at it here. Allow each subsidiary to manage its risk independently. It's not going to work. It's because we already talked about it in there. It's like, when everybody's managing the risk independently, they want to do it in their own way, and it's not going to be consistent, right? So there is an inconsistency, and the management wants to address that. Establish a company-wide risk management policy and framework. Maybe that's one. Conduct annual audits of each subsidiary only. That's fine. I mean, you can do the audits, but the audits will give you some results saying that, well, this particular subsidiary is doing this versus this particular subsidiary is doing this. So how are you going to be? So there's already an inconsistency in there, and just doing the audit's not going to give you anything in there. So outsource all risk management to a single external vendor. So what good that's going to do, right? Outsourcing it provides expertise, but does not ensure that the governance alignment is there, the internal governance alignment is there. But I think this is also B, establish a company-wide risk management policy and framework. Because by doing this, all of these subsidiaries, they'll follow the consistent practice. And they're all going to be aligning to the enterprise objectives or the goals, right? So I think B is the right answer here. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is about the organization that wants to protect its customer database against SQL injection attacks. Which of the following is the most effective control? A strong user password policy? Maybe. I don't know. It secures access, but will it prevent that particular injection? I doubt it. Input validation and parameterized queries. input validation and parameterized queries. There is a query, there's SQL, so let's keep that. We'll revisit that. C is about role-based access control for a database administrator. It definitely helps limiting the access, but the question is more about SQL injection attacks, right? Whether or not it's going to help there or no. Oh, okay. So one of the things that we want to talk about, what is SQL injection? SQL injection is some kind of like attack that exploit your input handling, the way that you handle your input in a poor way, and they see that vulnerability, right? And they want to exploit that vulnerability, right? So that's what it is. D is about the encryption, the database address. So encryption address, so data is there. It protects that particular data for sure, but it won't prevent that SQL injection. So I think we talked about B, input validation and parameterized queries. Is the right answer here. The most effective defense is validating input and using parameterized queries to prevent the malicious code execution, right? So I think B is the right answer here. There are lots of answers that's in B for some reason. I don't know why, but anyways, so that's the right answer. And that's the end of this slide. So if you like this particular presentation, I'm really looking for your input so that I can be more, intrigued in making these kind of videos again. So please help me out. And then, I don't know if I mentioned this in the beginning or no, but recently I cleared the CC exam. I think I mentioned that, and I'm going for another exam. It could be anything. I'm not sure. It could be CISM or like CISSP or some other certification, right? And that's why I'm doing all this. It's helping me as well as I believe it's going to help you. So your input is more important than anything to me at this time. And I really appreciate your time for sticking with me and, going over it. So thank you so much for doing that. And until next time, have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.